Aren't we wasting our time with this philosophy thing? Isn't truth just what the masters make us believe it is? Couldn't we simply reduce normative standards to malicious power games? As discussed in the previous episodes, our attempts to establish an immediate relationship with the world fails miserably. No matter what we do, we cannot cut off our activity and simply receive the package of truth, a ready-made setup from the world itself. Even in our simplest observations, our concepts sneak in. Not only a bunch of particular concepts, but the concept, the setup. Our setup, the combo of our worldview and value standard, is not a passively received given fact, but the concept we come up with to frame the world. Yet if we are always conceptually, in the broadest sense of the word, involved in our interactions with the world, isn't it fair to say that we construct reality out of nowhere, without any necessary relation to anything given to us? Our immediate desires are on the way for such liberty, forcing themselves upon us from inside. There is a tension here. On the one hand, we have to meet the world with a setup which cannot be simply given to us. This gives us an upper hand, because, apparently, we could construct the world we live in without any restrictions. Think about all the weird religions and ideologies we have had throughout history and compare it to the simple life of other fellow animals. Yet things aren't that simple. On the other hand, we are chained to our immediate desires, like any other animal. Upper hand, my ass. Our immediate desires interrupt our mediatory role. We can't simply get absorbed in our immediate desires like other animals. Neither we can boundlessly impose our mediatory force through a setup. Both are necessary. Can't get rid of either. How could we resolve this tension? Is there a real tension here though? All animals frame the world based on their desires. A bird frames the world to notice the threats, protecting their babies, and aiming for praise. Isn't that all we're asking to? No. Imagine that your animalistic desires magically turn into a micromanaging mom. She keeps shouting at you, eat, sex, sleep, breathe, kill. And you just follow. But there are moments that you wake up in a way, and you're like, wait a second, I have the capacity to resist. I know I'm hungry, but I don't want to eat. I want to fast for 20 days. Who are you to tell me what to do? This sense of resistance, this capacity to impose values and stand above immediate desires, is different from merely framing the world to satisfy such desires. Birds frame the world, but they never wake up. They just follow the lead of their desires and frame the world accordingly. Our struggle is unique. As much as we need to satisfy our desires like any other animal, we cannot function without imposing values. We are dealing with that tension. There are two ways to investigate this tension. From our perspective, individuals living in sophisticated societies, we can see that we are enforcing our mediatory role in all sorts of complex ways. From having religious codes and legal procedures to adopting hedonism or utilitarianism. We have access to a broad range of options to tame our desires. Yet if you put yourself in the shoes of someone who is following the story only from my videos, things look differently. Imagine a guy whose memory has been erased. He knows English, and his only source of information is my videos. A sad situation indeed. From his perspective, we have neither any reason nor resources to jump into complex moral codes or weird societal rules. The only information this guy has is the tension between the necessity of mediation and the force of immediate desires. We have to show this guy the way out. We have to find a way to resolve this tension only with the available resources. Nevertheless, it is sometimes helpful to look at this whole process from our modern perspective. To avoid confusion, we have to distinguish two different angles. The high angle, which belongs to us, looking at this process from a higher altitude, and the POV angle, the video watching guy's perspective. The high angle provides us some rich resources to understand what is going on here. But ultimately, we should make sense of every philosophical step we take from the POV angle, making sure we are not letting in any unjustified presuppositions. How could our guy resolve the aforementioned tension from the POV angle without jumping into any complex solution available to us from the high angle? When we take out all the complexity from the setups we are familiar with, we see a common feature among them. They all put the subject above what is given to the subject. Take the extreme case of asceticism. An ascetic still feels the immediate desires, but, in a way, stands above them. In simple terms, his perspective becomes the source of value giving. That's exactly what our guy is looking for. Not asceticism in particular, but establishing his perspective above all his immediate desires. That's the simplest way of talking about a setup without introducing any particular content. Whatever our guy's perspective might be, insofar as it is established properly, it frees him from the original tension. Sounds easy then. Have a perspective and go about your business. Not that easy. To see where the trouble is coming from, we should notice that, from the POV angle, there is no reason to make a distinction between one's perspective and reality, between subjective and objective perspectives. From the high angle, we understand that our subjective perspective might not correspond with reality. I might believe in astrology, but my belief doesn't automatically turn astrology into an objective truth. We, I hope, understand that there could be a standard outside ourselves, an objective viewpoint, which could be legitimately at odds with our subjective viewpoint. This, however, is not a self-evident fact. We shouldn't take this distinction for granted. Our guy doesn't have any reason or resources to think of his perspective anything different from the truth. Some of you guys might have some reservations about this distinction as well. Reality is subjective, one might say. Hence, we have to convince our guy, basically ourselves in this early stage of philosophical education, that such differentiation is necessary. For now, there is no difference between subjective and objective perspectives. Now imagine another guy is following this story and says, hell yeah, cool, my subjective viewpoint is the truth. Then we have two people with two distinct subjective perspectives, each taking their own view as the only truth. Oops. Trouble. Neither of these guys has a reason to back away from their claim. If one could actually establish their subjective viewpoint as the truth, why should they give up that tempting authority? There is no meta-level moral obligation at this point. It is the state of nature. They both claim their perspective is the truth. There is going to be a fight. One kills the other and his subjective perspective automatically becomes objective. Well, not that easy. Let's talk about the concept of territory for a second to see why. What exactly does it mean to say this field belongs to this lion? To say this is Aslan's territory? Imagine Aslan goes around and thinks that, oh, this is definitely my territory, without actually doing something to prove this point. The consequences would be unpleasant, because other lions would not behave as if the field is actually Aslan's territory. To claim a territory, primarily, Aslan must mark the field. So he goes around and urinates on the borders, although I'm not sure if gods could take a piss or not. By doing so, he communicates with other fellow lions and expects some sort of a behavior from them. Smell the piss? Get the hell out. Aslan's successful claim on a territory is dependent on a specific behavior of other lions. Neither inner conviction nor a complete absence of any other lion does the job. In the latter case, his claim on a territory doesn't get a proper response from the world. His territory and other places are no different when there is no one to give affirmation or challenge his claim. In the former case, he cannot get the response he needs from fellow lions. In the most primitive sense, Aslan's effective authority over a territory is dependent on the recognition of other lions by behaving in a specific manner. Piss out. Of course, Aslan doesn't exist and lions don't know anything about recognition. They just act instinctively. Yet this analogy is helpful for understanding our peculiar condition. On top of this primal territorial game, we human beings have the normative territorial game. Normative territory amounts to the level of effectiveness of a setup. How far one's subjective perspective could go in terms of legitimacy. The question is this: how could one effectively establish a normative territory? Very similar to the lion's game. The establishment of one's normative territory depends on a specific behavior of others who understand what a normative territory is. Not everyone could partake in either of the territorial games. For instance, viruses don't give a fuck about Aslan's claim on a territory. They can't read the sign, so to speak. Flowers or stones? Too nice for that game. Other lions and some other animals are eligible to play the game. Yet in our peculiar game, the normative territorial game, none of the other animals could give us what we need. I know you love your dog Stacy, but sorry, dogs don't get the point of normative territories. They cannot partake in the game, but you can. You understand the game. There is water for thirst, meat for hunger, and you for the game of normativity. One could establish their normative territory by getting the other to recognize their normative authority and vice versa. The problem is, though, that from the POV angle, one doesn't want just some normative territory, but all of it. Both of them want the other to recognize their perspective as the objective perspective. It is clear that the conditions are mutually exclusive. Only one could get the desirable outcome. Hence, there will be a fight over the absolute normative authority. One wins, the other loses. The winner keeps the loser alive to receive the recognition he wants. The loser trades all their authority to remain alive. The winner then receives all the recognition without giving any. To make sure the loser genuinely gives the recognition to the winner, let's add a little twist to the story. The winner attaches a bomb to the loser, the switch of which is at his hands all the time. The bomb would also go off if the heartbeat of the winner stops. The loser has all the fear, therefore incentive, to actually follow the winner. The winner becomes the master and the loser the slave. Although it might seem that the master is the clear winner of the fight, in the next part, you will see how the dialectical nature of master-slave relationship brings about a quite different ending to this story.